I'm an archaeologist. I've been an archaeologist for over 10 years, and I have over 10 years of telling people in pubs and on first dates and in buses in Central America, I am an archaeologist. And once people are done going, oh, she's like Indiana Jones, the same thing always comes next. Hey, I have this thing, I think it's old, can you tell me about it? And out comes a piece of pottery or a stone tool or once, I'm not even kidding, a human skull. And while I appreciate the appeal to my expertise, I always have to respond the same way. Hey, where'd you get that? Did you have a permit? Let me talk to you about looting. Looting is the removal of archaeological material without a scientifically managed excavation. It can be as simple as a guy in a field with a metal detector without permission, or as complicated as organized gangs of laborers targeting specific tombs. Anytime an artifact is looted, we lose the ability to learn something about the past. The market for artifacts is huge. How huge? We don't know exactly. The black market isn't talking, and the auction houses aren't sharing sales figures, but we know that estimated together, they're making billions of pounds a year. That artifact on the screen right there, looted, and moved into a museum outside of her country of origin. So what am I gonna do about it? Well, I'm looking at it from two different ways. First, I'm looking at how archaeology is represented to the public, specifically through video games. I'm looking at if virtually looting artifacts has an impact on how people behave towards archaeology in the real world. We know that some terror organizations, like ISIS, are using archaeology in games as a justification for their behaviors, but that's the extreme end. Closer to home, museums are seeing cuts in funding, and this means that more people are getting their experience of archaeology from games than from anywhere else. And the experience they're getting, it's not good, it's pretty bad. Artifacts are in games for two reasons, to be stolen and to be sold. The second area I'm looking at is disciplinary impact. I'm considering what are the ethical implications of the way that we're using archaeology and digital tools in the way we move with archaeology forward. We can't ask other people to follow rules that as archaeologists, we're not following ourselves. I have three outputs I'm using to illustrate my research. First, I'm building a video game that shows what ethical archaeology looks like and how it can still be fun, even if you don't steal everything. Second, I'm working with professional organizations of archaeologists in order to build better codes of ethics and codes of practice for digital archaeology. Third, I'm working with industry in order to create better mass market video games so that we stop normalizing criminal behavior and the pendulum of social acceptability swings away from looting and towards better practice. Thank you.
Very much. I mean, such an interesting subject.
Thank you.
Yesterday in Mosul,
Yes,
the mosque was destroyed by ISIS, obviously, which is an extreme thing.
Absolutely.
You say you're talking to the video games industry, I mean, which is as commercial an industry as exists.
Yes.
Is it realistic that they're going to be interested in something that is on a kind of higher level, which doesn't necessarily make them any more money?
Absolutely. My work and work of others who I've worked with have found that game companies actually want to do well. But it's very hard for them to talk to us as academics because we speak a different language than they do. And often we come across as very hostile, and that's something I have to work at in my work because I love video games. I play a lot of games, and you have to make sure that the way you approach industry is not as an antagonist. It says, I have something that can help your product, and your product influences my industry. So what can we do to put these two things together so that you make more money and we make sure that our findings get to the public in a responsible and ethical way? Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned that in the main, people are getting their experience of archaeology through games. Yeah. And that surprised me, because I expected it to be TV or something like that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. One of the key components of my work is considering the difference between passive reception and experiential reception, which means that you may see archaeology in film and in television, but when you play a game, you're having a different experience of it. You're creating repetitive content over and over again where you're looting and looting and looting and looting, and you're doing it. And there is a connection between constant repetitive behavior and learned behavior. So the thing that I'm looking at is really how is it that we can combine the fact that video games are the biggest entertainment industry existing right now, hour for hour, compared to the amount of pounds you spend per hour for entertainment, with these repetitive bad behaviors that are being encouraged for the public to undertake. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question appropriately? Thank you.
Question over there.
Hi, it's a really interesting idea. I was wondering if you had any data to suggest sort of what percentage of instances worldwide are there where computer game playing, and particularly in relation to looting, actually is a contributory factor?
That's one of the things that I'm doing a lot of data collection on. I have, at this point, over 550 survey responses, 25 interviews, and I'm still in the process of doing a lot of gameplay sessions with people where I'm putting together what are their perceptions of archaeology versus their interactions in games with archaeology versus how do they behave outside of gameplay with archaeology. And like I said, we know that archaeology in games has been twisted ideologically for some really awful ends. But at this point, it's still tying together how much does perception actually influence behavior. I know from the responses I've got so far that immersion in video games does influence perception, and that people, even if they are aware that what they're doing is bad behavior, they still kind of get this idea that because it's presented with this sense of, well, archaeologists in games do this, and archaeologists are the experts on archaeology, so if they do this, it's okay for us to do this. But I'm going to need to do more research, and I'm really excited to do more research so that I can get you a more definitive answer to that question. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Meghan, well done.